What's going on, people, and welcome back to a long overdue player versus player. And today is the battle of the Africans. Two greats, two strikers, and two of my favourite ever African players. These would be 1 and 2 for me in my all-time. If you check out on my channel as well, a while back I did my top 10 all-time African players, and these two were the top 2. Excited to do it. Strikers, and it's Didier Drogba versus Samuel Eto'o. Let's get into it. Heading, I think this was an obvious one. I think Drogba was a lot more dominant in the air. So for me, heading, easy one for me, Drogba. Anticipation in terms of timing a run, knowing where the ball's going to drop and where to be in the box and in and around it. I think Drogba was good at it, and I think he could do it, but I think when you watch Eto'o and what he did, he was more natural at it. Probably didn't have to work at it as much and sort of drill it into his brain. So I think anticipation would be Eto'o. Goals were, they both scored a ton of goals over their career. Drogba had 302, whereas Samuel Eto'o had 363. Tons of goals. I weren't sure who would have more, but off the top of my head, I probably would have guessed Eto'o. So goals alone, Eto'o. 1v1s, again, I don't think this was a strong point for Drogba. He could definitely do it, but I think a more natural striker and finisher in and around at 1v1s, I'd have to give to Samuel Eto'o. Composure in front of goal. Again, I love Drogba, but he wasn't always the most composed. A lot of the time he was, but I think Samuel Eto'o naturally was more composed. He just had a bit more of that ice-cold killer in him, I think. And for me, yeah, pretty easy one for me. Dribbling, again, I don't think Drogba was a terrible dribbler, but he was more about sheer strength, dominant on the ball in terms of power, hard to muscle off the ball. Had a bit of acceleration, don't get me wrong, and he was had a bit of speed about him, and he could dribble, but again, natural ability and a dribbler, Eto'o for me. Acceleration, just spoke about it there. Drogba was very quick at times, but I do think Eto'o is one of the quickest strikers I've ever seen, and underrated in that aspect as well. So for me, easy, Eto'o. Bloody hell, I feel sorry for Didier right now. Tenacity, I think they were both very good at it. I remember Drogba, I can't remember what game it was now. I don't know if it was Barcelona in the Champions League, where he got sent off and he was losing his shit and swearing at the ref. And so he definitely had it in him. I think Eto'o had it to a slight degree. I think Eto'o was a bit more of an irritant type of player and would just be like that rash that wouldn't ever leave you. Especially like off the ball in terms of pressing and just not leaving the person he's got a mark alone. I think it's quite a tight one for tenacity, but I probably would edge it to Drogba. Influence is a tough one because I think they were both key at this in their teams they were involved in. I think Drogba, even though he didn't do it over lots of games, he did it in the big games when it mattered, and that can't go unnoticed. Like, he hurt United a lot of times, cup finals and stuff. He was there and to be counted on. Didn't always win, but a lot of the time he did in them big moments. Eto'o, I remember that final against Arsenal in the Champions League, scores a very vital, important goal, and he did it over his career as well at difficult times and on big stages for Inter Milan with Mourinho as well. It's a tough one for influence. We're going to come back to that one. Teamwork, again, I think they were both very individualistic in terms of what they offered, but for the greater of the team in terms of getting them goals at tough situations and times. I think if we're talking overall what they're offering outside of the goals, I do think Eto'o edges it, but I think that one's debatable. Like, it's a bit harsh on Didier maybe, but I think Eto'o was had a bit more to his game. Agility, I think they were both agile, but again, Eto'o for me. I think that he was just nimble, agile, tight spaces, quick feet, skillful, had a bit of flair at times. Eto'o for me. Athleticism is a tough one because it depends on what you're basing it on. If you're basing it off of strength, sheer power, dominance, it's Didier all day long. If you're basing it off of things like dribbling, agility, speed, it would be Samuel. But in terms of jumping and like I said, that sheer dominance and power, it would be Didier. I'm going to go with Didier for that one. Technique, it's tough. I think Eto'o had good technique, but I also think Drogba had good technique. Who had the better? You know what? I'm going to edge that to Drogba, but I could see why people would go for Eto'o too. Awareness, I'd probably edge that to Eto'o, I've got to be honest. I think he was very clever in his moves off the ball and timing his runs, and not that Drogba wasn't, but I feel like Eto'o did it more. And was a bit more clever and suave at it, and savvy. Jumping all day long, it's Drogba. Don't get me wrong, Eto'o had a fantastic jump on him for a man his size. Like, he had a fantastic leap. And it's probably a bit harsh having to give it to him. But Drogba, in terms of remembering the headers he scored, he was just powerful, had a good spring on him, and he was already tall anyway. I'd give jumping to Drogba. Strength, Drogba. The way to hold off people, hold the ball up for his team to get into play and get up the pitch. Eto'o was, I think, was deceptively strong for someone his size. But, yeah, strength, Drogba. Presence, difficult one, because I think Drogba was underrated in this sense, and I think Eto'o, everyone knows that he had a presence. You got to remember as well, when Eto'o was playing, especially at Barcelona, the cameras weren't necessarily on him because they were on Messi, they were on Ronaldinho, so he didn't always get the light. But even then, with them players that I've just mentioned, he still had a massive presence himself. But whereas Drogba was one of the main guys for Chelsea all the time, they didn't have them sort of huge world stars. Probably edge that to Drogba. Trophies was a close one. There was very little in it. Drogba ended with 19 and Samuel Eto'o ended with 21. So not a lot in it at all. Harsh for Drogba to miss out on that, but I have to respect the numbers. Eto'o. Career-wise, Eto'o obviously came over to England, played in Spain, played in Italy, played at Madrid, Inter Milan, massive clubs. Barcelona, obviously. Drogba's played at some big clubs too, but I'd give career to Eto'o. But I do think Drogba's had a more than satisfactory career himself. And then lastly, legacy. Who's remembered more when spoken about now? Who's respected more? Eto'o is, and I think probably deservedly. He was my all-time top 10 African player. And I think he's got more of a legacy. He won more. I think he was a better overall player than Drogba. He had more to his bow, more strings to his bow. And I think he offered a bit more just off the ball without the goals than Drogba did. So, legacy in terms of who's remembered more. I think Drogba's highly respected, and rightly so. He's one of my all-time favourites. But legacy, I would give to Samuel Eto'o. So, coming back to influence then, on a game. It's so tough. I'm going to give influence to Drogba, but it's a tight one. So, we can see, guys, that it's going to be one-sided to Eto'o before we even tally up the score. But Drogba has got a few in there. And coming up against Eto'o it's hard. So, look, he could have got none. And I didn't know how it was going to end up. It's a lot more one-sided than I thought it'd be. But this is the beauty of doing these videos. Heading, Drogba 1-0. Anticipation, Eto'o 1-1. Goals, Eto'o 2-1. 1v1s, Eto'o 3-1. Composure, Eto'o 4-1. Dribbling, Eto'o 5-1. Acceleration, Eto'o 6-1. Tenacity, Drogba 6-2 Eto'o. Influence, Drogba 6-3 Eto'o. Teamwork, Eto'o 7-3 Eto'o. Agility, Eto'o 8-3. Athleticism, Drogba 8-4 Eto'o. Technique, Drogba 8-5 Eto'o. Awareness, Eto'o 9-5. Jumping, Drogba 9-6. Strength, Drogba 9-7. Presence, Drogba 9-8. Trophies, Eto'o 10-8. Career, Eto'o 11-8. Legacy, Eto'o 12-8. So there we have it, guys. Didier Drogba 8, Samuel Eto'o 12. I weren't sure how it was going to go. It ended up being pretty close in the end, because when you're writing the names down, it seems a lot more lopsided. But he did pull it back a bit, Drogba, and he's going up against, in my opinion, the all-time best ever African footballer. And Drogba, I highly rate him, hence why the score's so close in the end. He's done a good job. Hope you enjoyed it, guys. Let me know yours in the comments, who you had for each category and what your score was. Hopefully I'll be back with another player versus player soon. There's just always tons of videos to do and keeping up with the Premier League predictions. I was supposed to be doing basketball videos this year, and the playoffs are in motion. I kind of need to get into them, and I haven't. There's always recaps and player ratings and previews for United as well. So it's tough to keep up with it, guys, I've got to be honest. But they will be coming again. It's just I've got to fit them in, and it's hard at times. Appreciate everyone's support, though, and I'll catch you guys soon.